Welcome everybody to the fourth of our continuing series of groundwater lunch hours, our informal conversations to just kind of talk a little bit about where we're going, what we've done with the GSP, the Groundwater Sustainability Plan, and kind of talk a little bit about any questions that you may have. And so we have a little presentation that I'll go through here represent the formal team today will be myself. I'm Herb Smart. I'm a member of the TAC, and I work at Turlock Irrigation District. We also have Michael Cook, who works at Turlock Irrigation District. He'll be here to add in anything or let me know where I may have faltered a little bit, and also answer a few questions too. And then on our technical team, we have Brandon McMillan from TID, who's also a member of the TAC. So we're all here to kind of coordinate today. So I'll just get going in my presentation. It shouldn't be, I'm hoping it's 10 minutes or less. And then we'll just take questions and answers the rest of the time. So thank you for everyone for being here. And I'm going to see if I can advance my slide. This is just a reminder, we have two GSAs working on one single GSP in the Turlock Subbasin. You see here that we have the East and the West Turlock Subbasin GSAs, and where they're divided. It's always a helpful tool to have for a presentation so people know where they're located. So again, two GSAs have been formed, developing one plan to submit by 2022. So the GSP schedule was revised about a month or so ago. You see here we have 311 days left until the GSP deadline. And the schedule here, the things that I focus a lot on are what's being worked on by the technical team is usually in the yellow, and then the green shows when the chapters or sections for the GSP get submitted. And so right now you see the red line there, we're in March, and the first three chapters or sections of the GSP have been, which I'll get to on the next slide, I believe, have been submitted by the technical team, the technical consultant, to the technical team and the technical advisory committee for comment and review. And we're getting very close to the 30-day review period for the public as well to weigh in on those three chapters. And so here's the process, and all the way up until GSA adoption. And so the note there on the bottom is that the sustainable management criteria, you see there's on that line, the fourth row down, where it talks about sustainable management criteria. It has an initial review period, but then there's a time open in between before the final four chapters in August through October get released, where that criteria could be changed depending on how things look when the projects and management actions are modeled. So that's an interesting little component to where the team's flexible in order to get sustainable management criteria developed. It's a new slide, and basically it's just kind of preparing the way for the three sections that are going to be coming out for public review. As I mentioned before, sections 1, 2, and 4 they've been drafted by the consultant team. They're under review right now by the technical advisory committees, and they're soon to be released for public comment. So section 1 is administrative information. You see a little bit of information there about what's contained in that. Section 2, it discusses the plan area and what is comprised of that. And then section 4 is the basin setting, talks a little bit about the model and groundwater conditions. And I'll make note of two things. One, these slides are available on our website on the Groundwater Lunch Hour page where the agenda was for this. And so they're available for review or for your information. And also you notice there's no section 3 as part of this first wave of section review. Section 3 is the communications and public notice section, which is going to be a compilation of all the things that have been done throughout the GSP process to communicate to stakeholders. And so that's kind of getting held till last, even though it's still being constructed. And so those are the three sections that you should be checking your emails if you're on our email list, that you'll be seeing really soon being released for public comment. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that later. I'm going to jump out of this presentation because I attended a GSP workshop, and I'm going to share something else. I attended a GSP workshop, I want to say in late February, from DWR and the State Water Board, the two agencies that are responsible for regulating the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And I figured they were pretty helpful just to kind of discuss. So I'm going to go through those slides, not in as much detail or as decent of a detail as DWR and the State Water Board representatives did, but just for our purposes, I wanted to kind of cover them. A lot of people, the slide here that you see talks about, people ask all the time, what happens when the GSP is submitted to the state? And so DWR has done a really good job of describing that there's basically three phases or three results of the GSP assessments that they're going to do. One will be approved if the GSP is approved. One will be it's incomplete and has 180 days to kind of remedy things that were not complete. And then another one is inadequate. So that's basically three ways that our plan and the plans that are currently being assessed for 2020 subbasins, that's one way, or there's three ways that they will be categorized. And so we're certainly hoping that ours is approved, and there might be a few corrective actions in there as I'm hovering over here during the on the slide. But I'm guessing with some of the 2020 plans, they'll be deemed as incomplete and they'll have 180 days to remedy those, or they'll maybe even be inadequate and State Water Board intervention could occur. And so those are the three things that could happen once they're submitted: approved, incomplete, or inadequate. And so we'll learn more about that as we submit our GSP in 2020. Next slide here really covers the thing I wanted to highlight is, you notice here on this timeline, we'll submit our plan in 2022, and every 5 years, so in 2027 for us, 2032 and 2037, we'll have the ability to update the plan and make changes as we reach towards sustainability. There'll also be annual reporting to DWR as well. And so that's kind of the timeline after the plan is sent to the Department of Water Resources. I'm going to go through these fast just because they're more for information. And then the state board presented that it was in mid-February on their backstop role in terms of intervention. And so basically they talk about when a basin's in probation because intervention's needed, and if issues are not fixed, then they get into their interim plan process, which according to SGMA, the state board has the right to develop an interim plan in basins that are probationary and not complying with SGMA according to the law. So what does that look like? The state board, this is one of their slides that the state board presented about a month or so ago at this workshop. So a probationary basin, these are all the things that the state board can do. State board's basically going to make decisions. They get to fix the issues. They gather data that may not already be acquired. They may require meters, and then they also can charge their own fees, which is a good segue into the next slide. The state board has adopted these fees if they need to step into basins. And so you could see for all non-de minimis well owners, $300 per year filing fee, plus how much is used in certain basins. If it's a probationary basin, it's $40 per acre foot for every amount of water pumped. And then there's late fees too, if people don't turn them in. So you can imagine that these fees, if the state board ever intervenes in a sub-basin, will be quite pricey compared to what the locals would charge for managing groundwater. So that's kind of the big, you don't want to go there, slide from the state board. They also could require extraction reports. The state board can in their interim plans when basins that are probationary don't get out of that status, and so they'll be able to acquire that data in order to enforce their interim plan. So they could require extraction reports per the law. This is just an example of their system that they're going to use in order to locate wells. They could perform investigations. I'll flip through this. This is also a similar slide that we went through before. Here's the 4 things that are in their interim plan. Basically a schedule, a monitoring plan, corrective actions, and then of course their enforcement arm. Now, this is also a state board slide. This is the basic thing here is without a plan, you're in probationary period for 90 days. And then after 180 days, they have their interim plan developed and they start to enforce that locally. An incomplete plan, if determined by the Department of Water Resources, has something similar, but local agencies would have 180 days to remedy any inadequacies in an incomplete plan. So it's not quite probation or intervention, but it's the first step toward that. And then there's an inadequate plan, which basically is not adequate at all and goes straight into 90 days of probation. And so I'm going to jump out of there. Those are just some quick slides to basically talk about the Department of Water Resources role and also the role of the State Water Resources Control Board. And so then, other than that, I just wanted to make note to people on the call that, you know, our website, turlockgroundwater.org, has tons of information, past meeting videos, if you're interested in checking in on those. And also the big thing here that I keep highlighting is we have a get involved button that signs people up for our newsletters. A few of you probably received that newsletter announcing this groundwater lunch hour. And so just encourage people to continually go there. And also once we have the GSP out for public review, then of course, when people submit their comments, we'll provide an email address for people to submit comments. However, we'll also provide a venue through our website. There'll be a GSP section of our website with all the various statuses of the sections that have been released, as well as how to comment on sections that have been released and when future sections will be released. And so it'll be a good tool for people. And if you're on our interested parties list where you get emails from us, it'll be a good thing because that's probably the primary way, the quickest way people will note that certain sections have been released for comment. And we'll have a 30-day review period for each of those sections. So again, turlockgroundwater.org is a good website to visit regularly and also sign up for our interested parties list in order to get notices and updates. And my last slide here is just reminding people to stay connected. You know, for those on social media, we are on Twitter and Facebook. Our meeting videos are posted to the Turlock Groundwater YouTube page. And we also have some helpful videos that have been produced as well. And then again, sign up for notices at turlockgroundwater.org, and that's where we'll end up connecting mostly with all of our stakeholders, other than in-person meetings or virtual meetings and then in-person meetings. So that's my brief presentation. This is a very informal time, but it's always nice to have some prepared material in the event there are no questions. That all being said, I see a lot of other people have joined. I'll take a minute to pause and ask if anyone has any questions regarding the development of the groundwater sustainability plan for the Turlock Subbasin that we could attempt to answer. A little bit of a shy group today, maybe, or just.
This is Rhett Calkins. I have a question if nobody else does. I'm kind of curious, what is the next steps? You know, I'm kind of curious if we get to a step that says, you know, we're going to demonstrate to the state these steps that we're taking to reduce the draw on groundwater, and then what that might be. How are we going to reduce the draw on groundwater?
Michael, do you think you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah. Afternoon, everybody. I'm Michael Cook with TID. So as we work for the plan development, the next step in the process is what's called the sustainable yield analysis that looks at supply and demand in the future and determines how incongruous that is. So, you know, does demand outstrip supply or vice versa, which then affects whether you're a sustainable basin or not. And then as I understand it, we start working towards a sustainable future. So looking at reductions in demands and or increases in supply recharge projects that will bring the basin into balance over the next 20 or so years, which should then arrest the rate of decline. Now, my understanding is, Herb, and you can maybe help me here, is that we're not required to fix existing issues, but basically there's a 2015 baseline and things are not supposed to get worse, or that's kind of the starting point. undesirable results that are in existence in 2015 don't have to be remedied. We just have to make sure they don't get worse on a go-forward basis. So we're not turning the basin back to what it was in 1920, but more making sure that as we go forward over the next 20 years, we're not using or overusing groundwater at such a rate that we're going to have negative impacts on, oil users and rivers and ecosystems and other things. Did that answer your question, Rhett? But that's like coming up right now. We're working on the sustainable management criteria and the sustainable yield. So March, April, May, that's kind of where the rubber meets the road in terms of that critical component you're talking about.
Okay, that's yeah, I'm interested in that part.
Yeah, we just finished up what was called the basin settings. So like looking at, what does the basin look like, the geology, the hydrology, the hydrogeology, and all that technical stuff. And then from there, it's like, okay, now we have a foundation. Now let's look at sustainability analysis and impacts and all that type of thing.
Okay, good. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so I think that's everything Michael said is the way I see it as well, the way I understand it. And I think that's why this time period that we're in right now, which is why I pulled up the schedule, is key for people like Rhett and others to be a part of the shaping of all of that, at least as our discussions occur. Because his specific question was, how are we going to bring metrics back to certain ways, certain indications. And Michael was good to mention 2015. That's where the law kind of puts it. Of course, that was a unique time. We're in the midst of a multi-year drought, and then it was in late 2015. A lot of protracted problems started to occur in our subbasin. Thankfully, a little bit less severe as in other subbasins during that time, up and down the valley, specifically south of us. But yeah, right now is where the sustainable management criteria, and you see here project and management actions, in GEST have really just started to be discussed, and those will kind of culminate with a release in late August, and a fall review period for those actions and how they affect the subbasin related to how those get plugged into the model that's been developed and what they show as far as the results. And so I guess the take home is now is probably the best time to get involved in those discussions. And I know thanks Rhett for, you've been attending a lot of meetings, and I know Milt has too. And, your stakeholder input's been important. And so we're hoping that continues to multiply to others in the subbasin as they start to learn a little bit more about this. That's a good question. Anyone else have any questions or comments on, I mean, honestly, anything we presented, but really if you have any questions about groundwater management or the groundwater sustainability plan for our subbasin, always happy to hear them. We'll try our best to answer them. We won't have all the answers, but we'll at least be able to get them to you one way or another.
Yes, I have a question. Either to Michael or to you, Herb. How did the TAC meeting go yesterday?
Milt, it was really good, and I was genuinely disappointed you weren't there because we talked about climate change.
Oh, I understand that, Michael. I know.
So it's like, man, this is Milt's topic right here, and Milt's not here. So the consultant presented an analysis of climate change impacts through, I think, was it 2070, Herb? I think was the timeline.
Yeah.
So
2070.
So the consultants have done an analysis of the future. What would the future look like if we kept things the way they are today? And then we layered on top of that, what would happen in that scenario if climate change impacts affected us too? So it's kind of like the worst case scenario or realistic case scenario, depending on perspective. So a couple of things that kind of came out of that was, surface water supply availability would be potentially diminished because of the timing of rainfall, variability of rainfall, the type of precipitation, more rain, potentially less snow, so all that stuff. And then because of warming temperatures, evapotranspiration rates go up because plants need more water to survive the hot weather. And so demand goes up. And so I think what it resulted in looking at is over 2070, if nothing changes, to keep the current cropping pattern and urban uses the same, groundwater use would go up, I think it was like 16%, right? And so there's like, wow, that would have further adverse impacts on the aquifer. So we had to look at that and recognize that climate change could have a further adverse impact on the aquifer in the Turlock Subbasin. Now, obviously it's based on a kind of program that DWR gave us that has a lot of caveats saying, hey, this is a global model that we try to squeeze down and make into a local California model, but it's just basically our best work at this time with what we know. And we give that information to all the GSAs throughout the state, and they run the same analysis of this kind of this even level analysis, what the potential impacts of climate change could be on groundwater and Sigma compliance. So that was kind of it in a nutshell. And the group did vote to include that information in the GSP and the water budgets that are part of the GSP. So climate change analysis is part of the.
I remember reading an article by Peter Glick a couple of years ago, and he basically stated the results of climate change will be the fallowing of 500,000 acres in the San Joaquin Valley. 500,000 acres will need to be fallowed. And that was, I don't know what the time frame was on that. What he was saying that was going to be by 2070 or 2075 or 2100. Obviously, I won't be here. It's not really a major concern of mine, but if I have any descendants, maybe they will have to deal with the issue. So what do you think about Peter Glick's prediction about fallowing 500,000 acres in the future in the San Joaquin Valley?
I think I kind of remember that article, but not in depth. So, I mean, the thought is to me, if groundwater pumping has to go up 16% to maintain our current, let's just say, lifestyle, and we can't allow it to go up, so we'd have to, cut back pumping by that amount, then yeah, that would directly result in fallowing. But I think what we're looking at is what other options or alternative or additional options do we have to be sustainable? So is that, increased efficiency for cities, right? Do we get away from the type of landscaping we have right now? Is there alternative irrigation systems for farmers to, reduce the amount of water they use? Do we change cropping type? So I think there's a number of options to address, the reduction in supply or to reduce pumping that don't necessarily end up in fallowing, but that would be, the easiest, well, not the easiest way, but one of the ways to cut demand, if you just look at it big picture, is to say, okay, how much farming or irrigation would we have to cut to get to a net zero? And probably that's where Peter Glick's number came from.
And Milt, I'll also add, I vaguely recall that report. I know that the Pacific Institute's, Peter's put out a lot of stuff on that and water conservation and a lot of topics over the years. And I remember that number. Another number that I'm remembering too is there was a report that indicated that I think San Joaquin Valley wide, not so much specific to our sub-basin, that in order to comply with Sigma, or that I think want to say, they said 300,000 acres would need to be fallowed. And so I don't know if there's an overlap in those two studies or if there's something in the middle of that Venn diagram, but I heard that as well. I'll also note I'm working today to get the presentation that was presented by the consulting team up onto our website. So you'll be able to see that. And of course, that's always open for in future meetings. We could discuss that as well and reference that. So your only shot wasn't yesterday. And then the video from that meeting, which of course includes the presentation, I'm rendering on our YouTube channel today too. So both of those resources will be up on our website. And so you'd be able to kind of review those and then discuss it at a future meeting if you so chose. Good question though.
I will choose, I will choose that.
Definitely.
But That will be my choice. But, you know, the thing that I think really amazes me is that we really think we can just ignore the laws of physics. And, you know, again, I don't know how many of you watched Jeff Maroka's program or his presentation, but we're not going to, you know, we're not going to fool the laws of physics. The laws of physics will do what the laws of physics will do. And it's not going to be dependent on us. We're just part of the laws of physics. So we're not going to fool anyone. The thing is, I think it might be very unequitable. I think we need to think about how to make this equitable, especially in the fallowing aspect of it, because, you know, it's going to be a major challenge. It's going to be a major challenge. And that's something that's going to have to be dealt with in the future. So, you know, I hope it works out. I hope it works out.
Right. No, I mean, it's kind of consuming a lot of the water resources sector right now. And, you know, the state's looking at programs like, okay, if we have more rainfall in the winter that can't be stored, is there a way to divert that and put it in aquifers, right? It's underground storage rather than reservoir storage, but you have to make sure, obviously, we maintain adequate flows for fisheries and that type of thing. So, I mean, there's a lot of good minds working on this right now, looking at the future and how we can adapt to change. And there's a whole kind of suite of options or alternatives we can look at to make sure that we are managing our resources effectively and efficiently.
But being a man-made problem by our use of fossil fuels, the only solution is to modify what we're doing with what we're doing. Yeah, we have to modify what we're doing. We've got to do it fairly quickly because we don't have a lot of time. There will not be any storage because there won't be any rainfall or snowfall to store. I like the idea that people look at this perspective that, okay, well, we had 2017, it was an all-time record rain year since records were kept in the valley. Okay, that was an anomaly, and it may not, we may never have another rain year with as much rain as we received in 2017 because we're going in the other direction. It's a world issue. It's not necessarily just a valley issue. However, every part of the world is facing it in a different manner. Look what happened on the southeast coast this week. Mm-hmm. They had tornadoes where they've never had tornadoes. It just shredded up their houses. This is called climate change. This is what happens when you overheat the planet Earth. It's the laws of physics. And if we don't accept that reality, we're not going to go anywhere. We're going to be fallowing 500,000 acres of farmland. That's what's going to be happening.
Right. No, I mean, it's a global problem, and we all have to do our part throughout the globe to address global warming. I just think all we can do locally is recognize that, you know, the path we're on. What does that look like, and how can we adapt locally to deal with that without the global leaders taking the necessary steps to, you know, reduce the buildup of carbon dioxide and all that type of thing. What can we do locally? And I think you mentioned changes in rainfall patterns, and we're already seeing this in the last, few decades. At least our hydrologists are that, we have increased variability, right? So extreme wet years and extreme dry years are getting more extreme. Rapid going back and forth between wet years and dry years. The dry years are lasting longer. The wet years sometimes last longer. So you get these 3, 4, 5 wet years and 3, 4, 5 dry years. So the hydrology in this area and the natural flow into the Tuolumne over the last 30, 40 years has started to change, and we're seeing that already.
And I'll just add to what Michael discussed, kind of like what Milt was describing. Like it's not going to be there won't be one solution that gets us there. It's going to be a combination of projects and programs or management actions, as it's called here on this slide. And I think that the biggest thing that I keep thinking of is, there's going to be, I kind of like to what Milt mentioned, there'll be a little bit of a rethinking of the way things are done. We have an opportunity here, right? And so without knowing all the things that are going to go into the projects that are going to be put forth in the GSP, or the management actions that will be recommended. I don't know those. That's still up for discussion. But like, one thing is, we always thought historically, speaking as an irrigation district representative, we always thought historically about, above ground storage, reservoirs, and what do? We expand the reservoirs if we need more of the pie, and so that conversation shifted a lot, the past 10 years or so, specifically with talking about what Milt talked about with things changing to statewide and locally. Now with Sigma, we're looking at ways to store more water in the ground, especially when a 2017 type year comes. Because I think the numbers, I can't remember the amount of storage that's measured to be available in our subbasin, but I think it's somewhere near like 30 something million acre feet. Well, Don Pedro Reservoir is a little over 2 million acre feet, and so it just shows the scales of what we can do if we find an effective way to store water in the ground. And I'm sure to some element that will be one of the many, not silver bullets, but things that we will do in addition to increased monitoring of some sort, and figuring out ways to disincentivize various types of overpumping. If that's something that could be done. I know some subbasins have done that. And then incentivize different ways to conserve too. So there's like this bag of tricks that we're going to try and have in our GSP in order to do that, because, and I haven't fully looked at the presentation that was presented yesterday from the consulting team talking about modeling things for climate change through 2070. But as you start to see those results, it's going to be, these are things that have to be done. And so it's kind of my way of saying there's a lot of stuff that's going to have to be done to manage things. And I know one way, Milt mentioned man-made problem. Well, the two possible solutions, excuse me, are either increase the size of the pie in which we're using, which is probably not likely going to happen, right? Or change the management actions on the demand side. And so who knows what that will be, but a combination of those two things are going to happen.
I have an additional question. Does anyone know what the San Luis Dam levels are at this time? I mean, the most recent levels as of this week or last week. Does anyone keep track of San Luis Dam levels that's on the call today?
I could probably check it out during the call as a conversation ensues on DWR's website. I could probably pull it up. But with that, I guess what I'll do is I'll segue as I mentioned that to Milt. And even if not, Milt, I could get it to you after the call. I have your email too. But
well, yeah, if you could send me the email address and I could just look it up, I'll make it a favorite. And I could look up the Tuolumne River flow just by clicking Tuolumne River flow in my favorites, because I've got it there.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I'll do that. If it doesn't get mentioned on the call, I'll find a way to get it to you as well. With that being said, we're doing pretty good on time. We have another 25 minutes in this kind of open lunch hour, and just for those that are on, you feel free and stay as long as you like. If you've heard what you need to hear, or feel free and jump on out. We won't be worried about it, or won't feel bad. It's just stay on as long as you want to either hear what's being asked or ask questions of your own. So feel free, stay or go. But at this point, I'll just ask again and prompt if there's any questions or comments from those who are here, feel free and bring them up. That's what this time is for. So now, as I'm getting quiet, I'll look.
I've got a question. What part of the plan would be, as far as like what we're going to be limiting pumping to? Would it be like under project management actions, or do we have to do the monitoring first?
Michael, you can let me know if I'm wrong here. It's a good question. I think that without knowing exactly how the chapters are tentatively broken down, that seems to me like that would be mentioned in the projects and management actions chapter. And of course, there's a lot of interlinkages that come in the plan that things link back to one another, which is why you see those last 4 chapters. If I were I show it on the screen share. You see the last 4 chapters here, all released around the same time, because a lot of the things that are mentioned in the criteria here and the monitoring networks and the management actions kind of go together along with any implementation. So my guess, I would say that in talking about where things are going to be measured and managed, they will come in the projects and management actions. But I will also state that the sustainable management criteria chapter, which you see here, is one of the first 4. That one is, we've kind of started already discussing sustainable management criteria as far as the 5 sustainability indicators that we're covering. And a lot of that will also bleed into the management actions, because once we determine where we want to manage a certain criteria at, then it's going to take those actions in order to do it. So my guess, and Michael, let me know if I'm wrong, it's probably going to be covered in that. I think that's like section 6 or 7 of the thing of the GSP. So the projects and management actions section.
Yeah, it'll be in there, but it'll indirectly, we'll start it when we talk about sustainable management criteria, and what are minimum groundwater levels, what's the minimum amount of groundwater and storage we want to retain, and they'll lead then into those projects and management actions. I just want to, and Matt Beeman, Matt, you're at Merced ID, just pointed out to me that, going back to Milt's question about land fallowing, the state is looking at legislation right now, AB 252, to look at developing land fallowing programs and providing incentives for landowners to fallow land. So, very early days on that stuff, but people are starting to think about that, and how do we encourage that where it makes sense.
And have we started working on that yet, or is that still to be determined as far as on the projects and management actions?
No, we've had some very preliminary conversations about, and this is it kind of came up. We're also working on a thing of, if this has come up in other meetings, but the groundwater recharge assessment tool. So looking at options how to recharge additional water into the ground. And as part of that, we've been looking at things like some of the ephemeral streams and stormwater runoff that the ag areas and city areas deal with. And right now, it's kind of nuisance water that you're trying to get rid of as quickly as possible, but looking at potential projects where we could use city storm drain basins or purposely built recharge basins in the ag areas, or even on-farm recharge, so using orchards and vineyards to use stormwater in the winter to put on those lands that would then percolate into the aquifer to augment supply. So some of those early concepts have been kicked around as part of a kind of a side issue we're working on, and they'll get firmed up as we work in those project management programs over the next couple of months. Is there something you had in mind, Jesus, that's interesting to you?
I think what's interesting is the recharging. I think I want to say a couple of meetings ago when we had that storm that came by. I couldn't remember if it was you who mentioned it or somebody else, but I guess you guys already built like a recharge thing off of like creeks, dry creeks that only fill up when there's a big storm. Do you remember the volume that it gets recharged when it rains like that?
No, I really don't know. I don't know if I was part of that meeting. I mean, it's not huge amounts. We're probably talking a few hundred, a few thousand acre feet. And I don't know if we've actually, the one I'm a little bit aware of, and I'll get it all wrong, so I have to be careful what I say, but there's a stream called Mustang Creek in kind of the southern portion of the basin that ends up flowing into the Merced River, but on its way, it ventures through the Turlock Airport, which is out there on Newport Road and East Avenue, east of Turlock. And there's a large storage basin that's used to kind of flex the flows so that Mustang Creek doesn't, overflow and flood areas. So, could you then turn that storm basin into a recharge basin to capture all that Mustang Creek flow, and rather than get it down to the Merced River as quickly as you can, pouring it out onto that land, and then drilling some wet wells or French drains or whatever to force that water down into the aquifer. And there's another creek, I want to say it's called Dry Creek, I think, not the one in the Modesto area, but on again, closer to the Merced River, where, you know, that water could be captured, spread out onto land and used to percolate. But it's fairly small volumes, and it doesn't happen that often. But again, everything counts. And again, these are the kind of outside the box thinking that people are looking at right now.
And I'll just add to, or I will get back. I was able to look up on CDEC where San Luis Reservoir is at. And for the record, I think Milt, I think you call in, but I could also email this to you so you have the link. But right now, San Luis Reservoir is sitting at 466 elevation. It's down from down about 5-6 feet from this time last month, and it is at about 1.1 or so million acre feet, the low 1,000 or 1,135,000 acre feet of storage. And I'll send you that link so you can get like hourly, daily, or monthly data on that and other reservoirs too. It's a pretty cool site.
And I think
I really appreciate that. I'd really appreciate that.
And
Which site is that again?
What was that? One more time. Was that Jesus?
Yeah. Which site is that again? That you get that information from?
It's called CDEC. It's the Department of Water Resources, basically everything possible in terms of monitoring. So it's I'll put the link in the chat, but it's cdec.water.ca.gov, and I'll send that right now. It has reservoir levels, it has stream gauge levels, it has a lot of stuff, and that's pretty common. A lot of our hydrologists that are involved in a lot of this, they always recommend us to go there because it's the most detailed of the detailed put out by the state. And so I'll put the link in the chat right now, and you can get a ton there. And Milt, I'll send you the specific link as well for San Luis. But if you browse around enough, and honestly, it's perfect now. Honestly, I probably could just, if I wanted to, just show everybody around. So if you go to the main part of CDEC, which is the link I sent you to, you could get precipitation, you can get river forecast, river stages for flood levels. I clicked this reservoirs tab right here. There's the snow surveys are there, all the different stations. And so in order to get like reservoir storage, you could just go right here, click hourly, daily, monthly, and it'll show you all the reservoirs that are in the state, including Don Pedro and others, and it'll show you where they're at. And if you want to click inside any specifically, like for example, I went to San Luis Reservoir, click it, and it goes in and gives you specifics, daily data as it's updated too. And you could print it off, you could put it into a spreadsheet. A lot of modelers use it too. So just, it's a good site in order to get that statewide information. And they have a lot of, they have a current conditions tab here, which a lot of people go to, showing water conditions. So especially as we get close more and more into a multi-year drought potential situation, this site will be pretty well frequented by a lot of people. So yeah, CDEC, CDEC is in cat.water.ca.gov. It's run by the Department of Water Resources. So it's a good site.
And the good thing is that this historic information too, so you can see where we are as average or that type of thing. I just look real quickly, and statewide reservoir storage is about 77% of average right now for this time of year. So little snippets like that are always good. And then you can compare how our part of the state is doing to other parts of the state.
Definitely.
And then the river flow information's in there too. If you want to know how the San Joaquin's doing or the Tuolumne, and that's always fun during storms and floods to see the river levels.
Yeah.
Okay, we got about 14 more minutes. It's a good conversation, good questions. Are there any other questions or things on people's minds? I'll just pull up as I wait. I'll pull up this slide here that just shows kind of, I'm still trying. We haven't necessarily heard specifically back from the consulting team that's taking the tax comments on the GSP on when they'll have that next version ready to go when we ship it out to the public for review. But these are just kind of prepping you. These are the sections that you'll be seeing. So sections 1, 2, and 4 of the draft GSP. And so it'll be a good time to provide comment on that. It's a lot of it's baseline. Not baseline. It's a administrative stuff. But then as you get into the plan area and the basin setting, there's a lot of discussions in there that go right into the types of things we were discussing today. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
Do we have something already that's available to the public that you can send us?
Not yet. What's been drafted, the process that was kind of envisioned up was the consulting team. We're using Todd Groundwater and their sub-consultants that they're using are the hydrogeologists. They drafted up. They submit it to the technical advisory committee that was formed for both of the East and the West GSAs. And then those technical experts that are on there take a look at it, provide comments, and then right now the consultant is taking in all the comments that were made. We had like the first stab at making sure it's a good document to go to the public. They're making changes to that probably as we speak, and they're looking to get that out so that we can have. I would assume. I mean, I'm not trying to hold myself to anything. I hope people wouldn't, but. My guess is the way the schedule's laid out, within the next 1 to 2 weeks, we'll have something shipped out to the public on these 3 sections. Because early on, there were a few things, there's small things, typos and other things that are just impossible to catch that a lot of us on the technical team were able to catch. So we wanted to get it to where it's a good document ready for public review. But I will say, within the next 1 to 2 weeks, I would expect it so that we can have it out for 30 days and continue to be on this schedule here, to where that would give us about a week or so in order to get it out and to where we were looking to get it to be. So 1 to 2 weeks, I would suspect. And the best way to look for that, I don't know if you're on our interested parties list, but if you were to sign up for that, I send out the marketing emails or the MailChimp emails, the mass emails to people when notices come out. And so my plan is to send out a big one when that comes out, and with direct links on our website to where those could be downloaded, viewed, and how comments could be submitted. And so I would suspect to see that within the next 1 to 2 weeks in your emails, or if you visit our site regularly, it'll be prominent there too. So just stay tuned. We're almost there. I'm almost there, and we've been waiting for this too. So I know, give people a chance to have something to mull on or to chew on.
So I have a question. I made some comments to the ag water management plan, and along that line, there seems like a lot of things. TID has access to surface water in the Turlock Basin where other users don't, and it seems like there's a lot of room for projects and management actions for the GSP that would be focused specifically on TID. There must be discussion behind the scenes that's talking about how that might unfold, and do we just sit on those projects and management actions until the GSP it unfolds in the GSP, or I mean, I'm guessing there's a reason the ag water management plan was kind of lacking in action moving forward. It's kind of a rubber stamp. This is just my characterization. Rubber stamp of how we run things. We're just going to keep running things the same way. But we know that the state's taken action on groundwater, and there's a lot of things TID could do independently of the GSP basin actions. Anyway, just interested if you have any comments on that. Thanks.
Yeah, not really a comment, Rhett, but just the problem with the urban water management plan is, a year ahead of the groundwater sustainability plan. And I think we really have not got into projects and management actions at all in terms of what exactly TID would be looking at. I think we're trying to better understand the sustainable yield, what water is available, those types of things. And from there, figure out, okay, how can we do things that are beneficial to the district and the region? And that, again, will come over the next couple of months. But, it wouldn't surprise me then that some of those management actions get included in the GSP that ultimately then become a driver for, how the district or others manage their operations. And with or without the ag water management plan, those are kind of operational things or policy things that could be looked at as a result of the management actions in the GSP. So it kind of reminds me of like a horse race where the lead goes back and forth. And I think unfortunately, the ag water management plan was a little bit too soon for us to really look into those things in great detail, but hopefully the GSP will give us that clearer view that can lead to more detailed actions and management programs.
And I'll add too, Rhett. Debbie on our staff, Debbie Montalbano, she's says it much better than me, so I'll butcher it. But I think the way she's described it historically was that the ag water management plan tends to be a little bit of a snapshot of where things are at, and a little bit looking back at since the last. I think they're submitted every 5th year, every year ending in 5 or 0. And so it's usually a look back at all the numbers that have developed since then. There is a little bit of forward looking, like I believe the ag water management plan it has a climate change chapter. If I recall, I might be confusing it with the GSP, but there's a little bit of a forward looking element, but a lot of the ag water management plan, it kind of recaps what has happened the past 5 years and things that might be happening in the next 5 years. But it's a little bit less action related in my understanding of reading. I think I've seen 2 or 3 in my time at TID the past 10, 15 years. And so I know that it's a little bit more of a looking back. Whereas the GSP, we have an option here. We actually have, regulatory control and enforcement powers moving forward. And the environmental review with the PEIR and things like that are being developed to implement, real projects moving forward. So they're similar in a way, and they have some similar information, but a lot of times they end up being different in how they're approached, because now GSP is forward looking. Ag water management plan is mostly, I won't say completely, but it's mostly a recap of things that have occurred in the past few years. Good questions, though. We got about 6 minutes or so left. It's been a good conversation. There have been a lot of good questions, helpful for us too as a team in order to figure out what people are most interested in as we move forward and discuss things. Any other questions or comments that are on your minds? Any closing comments, Michael? Anything on your mind, thinking of that we may have didn't cover, or anything lately that might be helpful, letting people know the pulse of where things are at?
Yeah, I'm kind of excited because we've been working on this really for 5 years, ever since Sigma came out, and Herb was kind of the leaders in our area. Like, how are we going to implement Sigma in the Turlock Subbasin? So we've been at this for a while, and it's been very slow and methodical and a lot of process. But we're actually, I think the next 5 months is, all that 5 years work will be condensed into five months. And so I'm glad that Jesus and Rhett and Milt and others are really engaged now. And we need more people like you from the community to get involved and take ownership of our water resources in our region and help us develop a plan that gets this region on a path to sustainability as the law requires. So again, thanks for your participation. Keep in touch. I know Herb and his team do as much as they can to get the word out, and anything you can see that we can do to get the word out better, or whatever we need to do, let us know, because the more people participate, the better this plan will be. And I think that definitely is our goal.
Well stated, Michael. And I'll just close, I'll give one more chance for any final questions, but I'll just close by reminding everybody, visit our website. We update it regularly. You can get and sign up, click the Get Involved button to sign up for our interested parties list, where we send out meeting notices. We send out any materials we develop, and probably most pertinent to the discussion we had today, that's where you'll get the second it's out and posted on our website for public comment. We'll submit our an email letting people know that those, at least all the chapters, but specifically as we talked about the first 3 chapters, chapters sections 1, 2, and 4 are out for public comment. And so everything's there. Just encourage you to sign up for that list. And then of course you could stay connected through these means here, and you can engage with us, or you could just get information from us on these channels. So I think that's it for me. One chance for any final questions or thoughts anyone has, and I'll leave that open. Well, good. Silence is always a good thing at the end of a meeting. If you haven't already had lunch, everyone enjoy your lunch, and just stay tuned. We'll try and have these meetings, these groundwater lunch hours monthly, and connect with you that way, and just continue to check out our website and visit all the technical advisory committee meetings or the GSA meetings as their information gets posted. So encourage everyone to do that. It's all virtual right now, so it's somewhat easier. And I just appreciate everyone's time, and feel free to stay connected with us through these channels, and we will talk with you soon.